Hey everyone, welcome to the open world of Warcraft, where we focus on, you guessed it, the open world PvE content in World of Warcraft, including leveling, world quest, delves, and more. My name is Setsuko, and in this video, what I want to do is go over the warrior class side of the talent tree, give my opinion on the different talents there and how good I think they are for open world content. That way, if you are kind of trying to make your own build, you got a reference point here. Just kind of an opinion on these different talents. So we're going to jump right in here. Do note that we're going to be looking at the protection warrior tree here. There are a few different things that kind of tweak and change depending on the specialization you're playing, but in general, most of these talents have the same goal. So whatever's said here is pretty much applicable, and I am going to be trying to apply commentary here for all the specializations as we review these. So we're going to start out here at the top. We're going to have battle stance or berserker stance, depending on the specialization you're in. And then we're also going to have defensive stance. In general, for open world content, you're going to want to be in that offensive sort of stance pretty much at all times until maybe you get to some very high level delves or something like that, where you need some extra damage mitigation depending on the specialization that you're playing. But in general, we're going to want to be in battle stance. So for protection warrior here, this is going to increase the crit chance of our abilities and the duration of our movement impairing effects. Really, we just care about that crit chance. If we do pop over and look at the fury warrior, you can see that they have a stance here that increases the damage of auto attacks and reduces the duration of incapacitating effects, right? So again, we just want to be in that more offensive stance most of the time. Moving on to the second row, the higher up we are, the more likely it is we're going to take almost every talent on the row, and as we get further down, we'll have more choices, and you'll see that we'll end up picking up a lot of this stuff here. Fast footwork just gives you more movement speed. Now, we do have some movement skills available to us as warriors, whether that's charge, heroic leap, etc., but more movement speed, especially in open world content, is always great. There's less of a need for that nowadays, since we do have the dragon riding or sky riding or whatever they're calling it now, where a lot of times what you'll do is you'll just kind of tackle the area you're in, and then you'll just hop up on your mount, speed over to the next thing and do that. So there's not as much like between movement here, but that's on foot, but still the movement speed does help. So I like to pick up fast footwork on pretty much all specializations. Then we have War Machine. So your auto attacks generate more rage. More rage means we can use more rage abilities. And then killing an enemy instantly generates rage and gives you 30% increased movement speed for 8 seconds. So more rage is great. We're going to be killing enemies constantly in the open world, and that increased movement speed for 8 seconds helps you go from enemy to enemy or place to place as you're traversing the open world. If you don't want to use or don't have a charge cooldown or something like that. So great pickup there. Now here we have leeching strikes. This is 3% increased leech. Leech is going to help you to get your health back. Depending on the spec you're playing, that may or may not be valuable, but either way, we're going to have to take a talent to get down here to Stormbolt, which we do want. And the choice is between leeching strikes or intervene. Intervene, I don't recommend for open world content. This is going to have you charge towards an ally. A lot of times, when you're in open world content, you're not going to have an ally. You're going to be playing solo. So for me, the default pickup here is kind of leeching strikes. Maybe if you're playing in like a party or something like that, you want to go for intervene. This next row, all three of these to me are mandatory pickups. So the first one here is impending victory. This replaces your victory rush. This makes it so that you attack the target, dealing damage and healing you for 30% of your maximum health. If you kill an enemy that yields experience or honor, it resets impending victory and makes it cost no rage. So again, we're going to be killing stuff all the time. So basically the way this works is once your enemy gets down to a pretty low health, you'll slap impending victory on them, and then you'll heal up for that health. You'll get the reset and the free rage cost so that you can repeat this. And this is basically like a continuous health potion. It's super, super great for sustainability. Even once you get up into more difficult content, if we're talking delves, killing a trash mob and getting to hit that impending victory to heal yourself back up is going to be huge. So in my opinion, this is a must take. Next here is heroic leap. This allows us to leap through the air. It's just another movement ability that we can pick up, and we want to have as many of those as possible just to help us traverse around. So easy pickup there. And then we have Stormbolt as well. So Stormbolt is our stun ability. Now we do have an interrupt with Pummel, so if someone's casting a spell, we can cast that. But sometimes we want to stop them from doing everything, including their auto attacks, etc. And Stormbolt is going to be that. So pretty good, solid pickup here as well. Now, on the next row, we get into a couple of interesting things. So in terms of active abilities, we have Intimidating Shout and we have Thunderclap. And what you'll see is that is going to follow through on all of our specializations here as well. So when it comes to Intimidating Shout, this will cause the primary target to cower in fear, and then it causes other enemies to flee in terror. In general, I don't recommend this skill as a pickup for open world content. Ideally, you should just be destroying the enemies that you're facing anyway, and you shouldn't need that extra crowd control there. But the thing that I don't particularly like about this is the fact that it makes those additional enemies flee, which could potentially aggro other enemies that you don't want to pull in. Now, there is a talent here in the next tier we can pick up to make this more usable and to get rid of that flee. But in general, this is, to me, one that you could potentially skip if you wanted to. Second win here, restores 6% health every 1 second when you've not taken damage. So it's basically a between combat heal. And when you're below 35% health, it's going to restore health every second. This is a talent that generally I'd recommend that you pick up. It's just nice to kind of heal between enemies, but because we have impending victory, a lot of times we're going to be healed up anyway. So that top portion of healing when we've not taken damage isn't super relevant. However, that bottom portion, if you do happen to get low, it starts restoring health. That is pretty good. It also increases the amount restored the closer you are to death. Now, in many cases here, we should not be below 35% health anyway. So especially on a prot warrior, this is a skippable talent. But if you've got places that you want to put points, you could pick it up. This is a nice one to have on Fury and Arms Warrior if you're not picking up other forms of sustain throughout the class talent tree or throughout your spec talent tree. Frothing Berserker, so this one is one that's specific to the specialization. So in this case, Revenge has a chance to immediately refund rage spent. If we look at the Fury Warrior, it's going to be Rampage. And then if we look at the Arms Warrior, it's going to be Mortal Strike and Cleave. Rage refunds are always really good because, again, they just give you Rage back to cast another Rage spending ability. So that is a very solid pickup to me. The next one here is Bounding Stride. So this reduces the cooldown on Heroic Leap. So it's going to go from 45 seconds to 30 seconds. And when you Heroic Leap, you're going to get a burst of movement speed. I really like this. We get to use Heroic Leap more often. It's a great traversal skill, especially if you're going from like high to low terrain, because you can jump off the high terrain and then Heroic Leap onto the ground and you won't take fall damage. So really nice pickup here. I pretty much always grab this one. Next, we have Pain and Gain. So when you take any damage, heal for 2% of your maximum health. This can occur once every 10 seconds. I like this as a pickup, generally speaking, because this is less conditional. Over here, we have to have not taken any damage. This is basically just saying every 10 seconds that you're in combat, you're going to heal 2% of your maximum health. It's just a nice little passive healing thing, whether you're in an extended combat or not. So I like to pick up Pain and Gain here. Now, Thunderclap, this one is situational. For Protection Warrior, I feel like this is a must pick up. You gotta have Thunderclap. It's just an essential part to your kit. As to whether you pick this up on Fury or Arms, that just kind of depends. Generally, for those specializations, I would skip Thunderclap unless I'm trying to do a particular type of build. So that's going to bring us over here to our next row where we'll look at a couple different things. Now, obviously, we kind of have a branch going here where we're picking up Thunderclap on protection and possibly not picking it up on the other specializations. So we'll see how that plays into what else we want to pick up later down the line. Also, again, Intimidating Shout here is one that I generally don't recommend. However, if we do pick up Intimidating Shout, and we come down here, we have the next talent here. This is a choice talent, so we can choose Intimidating Shout can withstand 200% more damage before breaking, or we can pick up Menace, which it will knock back all nearby enemies except your primary target and cause them to cower in fear for 15 seconds instead of fleeing. If you are going to pick up Intimidating Shout for open world content, I highly recommend grabbing Menace as well. You get rid of that flee, which you're not really worried about, and you basically just kind of CC everything around you, and there's less potential for you to pick up additional enemies that you don't necessarily want to pull. Next, we have Spell Reflection. So this is a ability that will reflect a spell that's cast on you, and then reduce magic damage you take by 20% for 5 seconds. This one is skippable in my opinion, but if you do want to pick this one up in order to get something else, like let's say that you weren't going to pick up Intimidating Shout, but you wanted to get down here to Honed Reflexes, you could pick up Spell Reflection, and then what I would do is I would just cast Spell Reflection when a spell was being cast on me first, and then switch over to Pummel for the interrupts afterwards until I got the charge of Spell Reflection back. So that's a take it or leave it. I generally will try to skip this one if I can. Rallying Cry is one here that will give all party and raid members 10% temporary and maximum health for 10 seconds on a 3-minute cooldown. Not super useful in open world content, especially if you're playing by yourself. So generally I would try to skip this one, but depending on the specialization and stuff that I'm playing, this does get us into 3 of the next tier talents. So it can be a good sort of travel talent is what I would call it, where you just pick it up so that you can get to other things here. But again, this one is skippable. If you're going to get there through Spell Reflection or Shockwave or something like that, you absolutely could skip this one. Shockwave to me is a very solid pickup for all specializations. So this is an ability that stuns targets in front of you for 2 seconds on a 40-second cooldown. So just a really good CC. I vastly prefer this to Intimidating Shout, which does have a 1.5-minute cooldown. So if it were up to me, I would just pick up Shockwave and go from there. And then finally, Crackling Thunder. Thunderclap's radius is increased by 50%, and it reduces movement speed by an additional 20%. If you're going to pick up Thunderclap, then picking up Crackling Thunder can be pretty good if you feel like you want the radius. The movement speed doesn't matter too much here. But if you do feel like you're using Thunderclap and you're not hitting all the targets that you want, then you can go ahead and pick up Crackling Thunder. But if you feel like you've got a good handle on the positional and you can move yourself to hit everyone with Thunderclap, then you can skip Crackling Thunder as well. On to the next row, we've got Honed Reflexes. So the cooldown of Shield Wall, Pummel, Intervene, Spell Reflection, and Stormbolt. So a lot of our CC and our defensive abilities here is reduced by 5%. If we go over to Fury, we're looking at Enrage, Regen, Pummel, Intervene, Spell Reflection, and Stormbolt. So again, it's the same abilities, but we've swapped out Enraged Regeneration there. And then arms, we've got Die by the Sword, Pummel, Intervene, Spell Reflection, and Stormbolt. So generally, this is a pretty decent pickup. I do like to pick this one up. Just being able to pummel more often and Stormbolt more often is generally worth the point. But again, if you haven't gone over to this side already, then you can skip picking this up. It's not a huge deal. It's just more of like a nice to have. If I was going to get here, generally what I would do is I would pick up Spell Reflection to put myself in here over picking up Intimidating Shout, because one, Intimidating Shout has a much longer cooldown than Spell Reflection, and we want short cooldowns in open world content. And two, I really feel like you have to put 2 points into Intimidating Shout in order to make it usable in open world content. So to me, that's just, 1 point versus 2. So that's what I would do there. Next, we have Shield Slam deals additional damage and increased critical strike damage. On the Fury tree, this is going to be Bloodthirst, and on the arms tree it's going to be Mortal Strike. So pretty much for all three specializations, those are going to be some of your core abilities, so I would definitely put points into those. So whether you get there through Spell Reflection or whether you get there through Rallying Cry, that's up to you. Again, for me, I prefer Spell Reflection here because I'm going to be able to use it more often, and it is very much, going to affect me, and I'm not wasting talent point potential because I have an ability that's supposed to apply to, my party, which doesn't really exist here. Next, we have Bitter Immunity. This restores 20% health instantly and removes all diseases, poisons, and curses affecting you. So that is going to be another 3-minute cooldown talent. We honestly have enough health regen and sustain in the warrior class that I don't feel like we need a 3-minute 20% health instant cooldown here. So it's an easy skippable for me, and also it makes it so you don't feel like you have to pick up Rallying Cry either. Next up, we have Overwhelming Rage. So maximum rage is increased by 15. So this one to me is a very situational pickup. It depends on your build. It depends on how much rage you're generating. It depends on how much rage you need. But if you're playing your build and you feel like you keep capping out your rage because of your rotation or something like that, then you could pick these up. This will actually get you up to 30% increased rage. So it really just depends on the build. So sometimes this is a take, sometimes this is a skip. Next, we have Rumbling Earth. So this increases the range of Shockwave by 6 yards, and when it hits at least 3 targets, the cooldown is reduced by 15 seconds. So this can be good, again, situationally, depending on what you're doing. So let's say you're in a delve, and there's a bunch of enemy groups that you're fighting. You want to use Shockwave a lot for that stun. This could be a really good pickup because if you hit 3 targets, it's going to turn this into a 25-second cooldown for Shockwave, which is going to mean you can use it at the start of like every group of enemies. However, if you're doing, for example, open world questing, or you're leveling and you find that you're only pulling 1 or 2 targets at the same time, then it's not quite as valuable. I would say on Protection Warrior, when you're leveling, your goal is to group up as many things as possible and then kind of hit them with your AoE. So Rumbling Earth could be a really good pickup there. And then for Fury and Arms, it just depends on which type of build you're playing. Next, we have Armor increased by 10%. That's a pretty solid pickup for pretty much anyone. More armor means less damage taken, so just a generally good pickup. Moving on to the next tier, we have a bunch of choice nodes. So we start over here and we have Wrecking Throw. So 45-second cooldown, you hurl your weapon at the enemy, it deals damage, ignores armor, and deals extra damage to absorb shields. So again, if you're in an area where you're fighting enemies that have a lot of absorb shields, this could be an okay pickup. But generally I would skip this. Shattering Throw, same kind of deal, 3-minute cooldown. You're going to hurl your weapon at the enemy, dealing damage, ignoring armor, and removing magical immunities. Again, deals additional damage to absorb shields. Pretty much this whole node here, for me, for open world content, is skippable. Maybe something you spec into if you were fighting in an area where a lot of enemies had absorb shields, but even then, I don't know that I would pick this up. If I did, I would pick up Wrecking Throw on the 45-second cooldown, because if you're fighting so many enemies that have absorb shields, you're going to want to be able to use this more often. But generally, this is a skip for me. Next, we have Barbaric Training. So Revenge deals increased damage, but costs more rage. And then we have Sidearm. So your auto attacks have a chance to hurl weapons at your target and 3 other enemies in front of you, dealing additional physical damage. If we look at this on the Fury Warrior, so this is going to be Slam and Whirlwind deal increased damage. And on the Arms Warrior, it's going to be Slam, Cleave, and Whirlwind deal more damage and have increased critical strike damage. In general, one of these should be a pickup for you. So if you're okay with things costing more rage, in that case, or over here, having the increased damage and critical strike damage, These are just really solid pickups. So I would, in most cases, I would grab the top one. But sidearm is a nice passive. So if you're having rage issues, or you want to spend that rage on something else, you could definitely pick up sidearm. I generally will pick up sidearm just for a little bit of extra just passive damage here, but either one of these is perfectly fine. So I would want to pick up, one of them. Next, we have double time. This increases the number of charges on charge by 1 and reduces the cooldown by 3 seconds. In my opinion, open world content, mandatory pickup. This gives you 2 charges for charge, so you can get around a lot faster. So now we've got 2 charges of charge. We've also got heroic leap. We've got some increased movement speed throughout the tree as well. So, we've got a lot of get up and go here once we kind of get further into the talent tree. Next, we have a couple of talents here. So we have concussive blows. The cooldown of pummel is reduced, and if you interrupt an enemy, it increases the damage you deal to them by 5% for 10 seconds. So if we look at this over here, it's going to be the same for Fury, and it's going to be the same for Arms. Now, the top option that we have here, Seismic Reverberation. So if Whirlwind or Revenge hits 3 or more enemies, it hits them 1 additional time for 30% damage. Over here, if Whirlwind hits 3 or more, it hits them an additional time. And again, if Whirlwind or Cleave hits 3 or more enemies, it hits them 1 additional time. In general, I recommend picking up Seismic Reverberations here over Concussive Blows. It is nice to have the cooldown reduction on Pummel, but we've got a little bit of that over here with Honed Reflexes anyway. And I like this because if you are hitting multiple enemies, then you're going to hit them for more damage. So on Prot Warrior, 100% I would pick up Seismic Reverberation. Again, on Fury and Arms Warrior, it kind of depends. If you're running a build where you basically pull one enemy and you just destroy it, and then you pull the next one, or you're only pulling maybe 2 enemies at a time, then I would go with Concussive Blows for that increased interruption. But in general, if you're going to be pulling 3 enemies or more at a time, Seismic Reverberation is really good. Next, we have a choice here, Berserker's Shout. So this will remove Fear, Sap, and Incapacitate effects, and also remove them from other group members. And then we have Piercing Howl, which snares all enemies within 12 yards. In general, this is a skip for me. If you do find you're in an area where you keep getting feared all the time, you could pick up Berserker's Shout, but again, it's a 1-minute cooldown, so you won't be able to use it too often. And then also, if you're in a place where enemies are running away all the time, you could pick up Piercing Howl just to kind of stop that, but we've got so much movement with Charge, Heroic Leap, etc., that generally we should be okay. So this is a skippable point for me. All right, so we got to spend a couple more points in this tree before we can get down here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that Rumbling Earth. We're going to go up here. We'll grab Second Wind. There we go. Okay, so now we get into sort of our capstone here. And we've got 3 different directions that we can go. So we can go with Thunderous Roar, which is an AoE ability that deals physical damage and causes enemies to bleed. We've got Avatar, which turns you into a Colossus, increases your damage by 20%, and frees you of movement impairing effects. And then we have Champion Spear, where you throw a spear at a location, it deals damage to targets, and then those enemies are chained near the spear's location. Now, Champion Spear has a 1.5 minute cooldown, and there's no cooldown reduction here for it. So you're going to be on that 1.5 minute. With Avatar, we got a 1.5 minute as well. And then there's no way to reduce the cooldown here, but there is a way we can sort of get a mini Avatar through a point here. And then we have Thunderous Roar, which has a 1.5 minute cooldown as well. However, we can cut that cooldown in half with Uproar. So generally what I will do is I will go in the Thunderous Roar direction with the cooldown reduction so that I have a 45-second cooldown ability that I can use basically every pack or every other pack of enemies that I'm pulling. So that's generally my thought process there, is to have something I can use more often than these over here. And really the capstones on the warrior side here are like fine. There's not anything too exciting in my opinion. So let's take a look at these. This row here is pretty much all going to be passives. So we've got critical strike chance increased and critical strike damage of execute increased. We've got haste increased and auto attack critical strikes increase your auto attack speed. Damage with one-handed weapons and leech is increased. Stamina increased and the duration of incapacitate effects on you is reduced. And then we have strength equal to 2% of our armor. Just to check here. Okay. So damage while dual wielding for Fury. And then here, damage with two-handed weapons on arms. So in general, this middle one here, I would just pick this up. So prop, we get increased damage with weapons and leech. We could really pass this up on prot. I would definitely pick this up for Fury and arms. But over here, we're going to go, 2 points into that critical strike chance. That's always nice. Haste and auto attack speed is, in my opinion, always a great pickup as well. Stamina and strength here. So these depend. If you have extra points, I would definitely put points into these. But let's go ahead and drop down here. So we'll grab Thunderous Roar and we'll grab the cooldown reduction. Okay, at this point, we need level 62 here, so we're still kind of working on it. This increases the duration of the bleed from Thunderous Roar, and it causes enemies to take 30% increased damage from your bleed. Now, this one is entirely up to you, in my opinion. I usually pick it up just to amp up the power of Thunderous Roar here, but you could absolutely pass on this as well, because most enemies you're going to kill pretty quickly. If you are in a bleed-heavy build, then I would definitely pick this up to kind of amp up that bleed damage. But in general, this one is potentially skippable if you want. Now, we've still got 4 points left here, so if you wanted to, you could go down and get Avatar. If you grab Avatar, then you're going to have a choice between activating Avatar or Shield Wall will grant 4 seconds of the other. If we look at this on Fury, it's going to be Recklessness. And if we look at this on Arms, it's going to be Sweeping Strikes. Actually, this one says activating Avatar grants 8 seconds of Sweeping Strikes. While Avatar is active, the cooldown of Cleave is reduced. So I do really like that top talent here for Arms. For Fury and Protection, I mean, it's nice to have. You can basically cast an ability and get a couple seconds of Avatar, so you get that increased damage for 4 seconds, which is pretty nice. On the bottom here, Avatar increases the damage of Thunderclap and Shockwave and reduces the cooldown. If you're going to go into a Thunderclap heavy build, which for example over here, we might be talking about like the Mountain Thane, which we'll get into later, that is a really good pickup. If we look at Fury Warrior, activating Avatar, cast Odin's Fury, activating Odin's Fury, cast Avatar. This one is a really good pickup as well. Odin's Fury is a really nice buff to have on a Fury Warrior, and being able to kind of bounce back and forth between Avatar and Odin's Fury is really nice. And then here, activating Avatar grants 6 seconds of Recklessness. The additional rage generation is reduced by 25%. Again, really nice. If you like Avatar and you like that playstyle, then I mean, you can't really go wrong with any of these pickups depending on your build. So you could definitely spec into that as an additional pickup if you wanted to, or if you don't like Thunderous Roar, you can go over to Avatar and pick some of that up. Again, you have enough talent points here to kind of go into a couple of different ones depending on the specialization that you are. And then here, if you were to go for the Champion Spear, you got an option to increase the damage by 50% and the rage generation by 100%. Just a really nice pickup. You know, if you're going to cast it, you might as well get more damage and more rage out of it. And then over here on this side, the duration is increased by 2 seconds and you deal increased critical strike damage to targets chained to your spear. Again, if you're going for like a crit heavy build, it could be nice to have that increased critical damage as well. So what you do here really just depends on your build. You can also take those points and you can just grab 10% stamina, and you can grab 4% strength, or strength equal to 4% of your armor. So whatever you want to do here. But that is my overview of the warrior class talent tree and what I think of each of the talents. Hopefully that gives you an idea of some things that you could skip, or some things that you definitely want to take. That's kind of the goal here. And that should at least get you started with kind of working through one half of the talent tree. So we'll be looking at these class talent trees for the other classes, and we'll also be putting together specialization builds and all that kind of good stuff here coming up as we approach the War Within. So if you like the content here, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, help us grow. And I hope you did enjoy the content. Share it with a friend who might be interested in playing the warrior in World of Warcraft. And I'll see you on the next video.